Going on, everyone? So the record still stands. The Miami Heat blow out the Boston Celtics. I mean, they controlled this game and dominated this game start to finish. Boston is all kinds of a mess. They can't win at home. They just really underperformed all playoffs, and their stars are absent too many times in too many significant moments. And when Boston managed to win in that heroic Derek White play in Game 6, the whole everything shifted. Boston should have absolutely won this game. Not saying that they should have blown them out or anything like that, but you're on the cusp of breaking history or making history, and you are at home. You have all the momentum, all the pressure is on the Heat now for failing to be up 3-0 and potentially losing the series. Like, just everything you could possibly want to happen was in your corner. All of it. Problem is Boston is just, they're too predictable offensively. This is something that I said even last season, right? That Boston is just too predictable. It's the reason why I thought Boston would lose to the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals. It's why I thought Miami, this series was basically a lock. I did end up thinking Miami blew it. I thought Miami was going to close the series sooner rather than now. But it's just Boston is just jack up a bunch of threes. And when you do that, you live by the three, you die by the three. And now they're shooting like 15% from three over the last two games. And you've watched Jason Tatum just walk to the basket, even early in this game, to start this game. Tatum and Brown and everybody were just walking to the basket. Why didn't they play Robert Williams more? Like, he was killing Miami. All the second chance points, just his ability and his size, like, was a problem for Miami. It just, instead of using your length and your size advantage and capitalizing on the things that you have, they just decided to play into Miami's game perfectly. Like, Boston lost this series, right? Because Miami just said, okay, well, we're just going to let you jack up a bunch of threes, and we don't believe that you're going to beat us. And Boston just said, okay, well, we're just going to play right in your hand. And even when things are going poorly, we're not going to make any adjustments. We're just going to keep jacking up threes because we're going to turn it around. And it just never turned it around. Boston is just way too predictable the way they're currently constructed. And they need to get a real coach. Not only do they need to get a real coach, they need to retool this roster. Miami, you got to give Miami all the credit in the world. I mean, the second 8 seed ever to be in the NBA Finals? Personally, as much as it pains me, because I really would love to see Jimmy Butler go get an NBA championship, I just think Denver's going to run through Miami. I thought Denver was going to run through either of these teams based on what we've seen in this series. And I just expect, I think Miami wins 1, maybe 2 games, but I think very likely Denver's just going to run through the Miami Heat. I just think that them having to fight and go to a Game 7 and all that stuff really just made things already more difficult than it already was. But regardless, the Celtics, they blew this. They have more talent. They have a deeper roster. They have the better stars. They have everything. Everything that they needed to win this series and win this series handily. And they just couldn't do it. You got to give Miami all the credit in the world. This team is special, man. Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo can't buy a bucket the last few games. And you have guys like Caleb Martin, who absolutely deserves the MVP for this. I mean, Jimmy Butler's probably going to get it, but you got to give it to Caleb Martin, right? He should be co-MVP for this, for the Eastern Conference, right? Because this guy was unbelievable. Like, this whole series, he was arguably Miami's best player throughout this entire series, or at least most consistent player throughout this entire series. And Caleb Martin torched the Boston Celtics this series, and all of it. I mean, Miami is Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and like 10 undrafted guys. Literally, they have 7 undrafted players, and they just put on a clinic against the Boston Celtics, who have a star-studded roster, top 5 defense, top 5 offense, looked prime and ready to go, were super huge heavy favorites, right? And just disappointed. Again, you can't count on Jason Tatum. And look, I know people are going to say, Jason Tatum, he got hurt, he rolled his ankle in the beginning of the game, so that changed everything, blah, blah, blah. They should have never even been in this position, for one. And two, what about the rest of the playoffs? Right? Like, Jason Tatum had multiple games on multiple stretches where he might as well not even have been on the court. And you can't have that. And then your second best player in Jaylen Brown is turning the ball over 10 times a game and struggling to dribble the ball and just jacking up terrible shots. And it's just like the game plan is like too much isolation. Give the ball to Jaylen Brown, give the ball to Jason Tatum, let them jack up shots. If not, kick it out and jack up 33s a game. And, down the stretch, it's like, okay, well, who do we got? Jaylen Brown isn't showing up. Jason Tatum isn't showing up. Okay, let's give the ball to Derek White and let Derek White try to, like, that is everything Miami could ask for. Yes, let Derek White try to beat us. It's ridiculous that these Celtics just continue to underachieve and underperform. And I just don't think they're going to be in this limbo as long as they have this roster. They just are. They're in this limbo. They're a very good team that just cannot get over the hump. And we've seen plenty of teams like that. We've seen plenty of teams that every year they're in the Western Conference or the Eastern Conference Finals and all that stuff. I mean, Miami too. I mean, you can make an argument about Miami too. Like, every year they're in the Eastern Conference Finals and every year they're in the NBA Finals, something like that. And they're just not quite good enough to win it, right? Like, Miami needs to get Jimmy Butler another star. They need to get somebody, whether it's Kyrie, whomever, they need to get Jimmy Buckets another star. Because I think that if you took this roster and you added, say, a Kyrie or somebody like that, just another go-to scorer. It doesn't have to be Kyrie, just using him as an example because he's a free agent. But, somebody like that can come in and provide consistent night in and night out scoring, clutch shots, close down the stretch. If Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo are having a bad game, like in Game 6, he can take over down the stretch and keep it tight because Miami's defense, coaching, all that stuff is going to keep you in these games. And to go from, heartbreak and just devastation, it just shows the toughness Miami has that Boston doesn't. And that's been a big point that I've tried to make throughout the course of this season and even last season. Boston does not have the mental toughness. They are terrible down the stretches of games. And it's why I just don't think they're going to be able to get over the hump. They need a consistent closer. They do. Right? Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are good enough to win you games, blow out games. But down the stretch of games, you can't rely on them. You can't. Right? Like, if Derek White doesn't save the day in Game 6, then, at this point, it might have been better, right? Because now you just got ran through on your home court, right? It's just, but still, like, Derek White kind of took the heat off of Boston momentarily. And then Boston rewarded that gift by going into Boston at home and just being terrible. Like, there's no other way to put it. I mean, they were just awful and played right into Miami's hands and then just continued to play into Miami's hands. That's coaching. That's the players. It's not all on the coach. A lot of people are going to try to blame the coach. It's not just on Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla is in over his head. It's clear. I mean, he's as old as like half the players in the league, right? He might be a good coach one day, but Boston just is so talented that they were able to get here even with the lack of coaching. Problem is that they're very talented, but they're not mentally tough enough. They're not consistent enough. They're too predictable. They're not a great basketball team. They're just not. And it's a real problem. So I don't know. They're gonna have to figure it out. I really think you got to blow up Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I really do. I think because that's the only way you're going to be able to change the roster. You're not trading Jason Tatum, but this duo is not working. They need a definitive 1 and 2, right? Like if Jason Tatum is going to be the number one, they need to let him be the number one and then allow a number two to be a number two. They need to have they need to kind of carve that line in the sand is what they need to do. And I just think you got to trade Jaylen Brown. I think you got to trade Marcus Smart if you have to, whatever. You got to retool this roster. You got to rebuild this roster and try to get back into contention. I just think that the way that they are currently constructed, and if they keep trying to play this brand of basketball, they're going to keep having these same results. Maybe you get lucky, and maybe you just go on a hot streak or something like that throughout the playoffs, and you're able to, win an NBA championship. I just don't see it. I just don't buy it. I just don't think the Celtics are going to be able to do it. We've seen this now for 6-7 years, and it's the same result every time. Every time. So I think it's time to change it up. If you want to just be a perennial second Eastern Conference Finals team, then fine, keep the roster the way it is, right? You're going to be one of the best teams in the league every year. Again, maybe you get lucky, a couple things fall your way, and you win a chip. But I just think realistically, if you really want to be a year in and year out contender, they got to change it up. The Celtics just aren't a real contender, and they've shown it. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Agree with me? Disagree with me? How do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are, love to hear it. Let me know.